Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 417, and today we're going to talk about Tiny Epic Galaxies. This is the third in a sequence of Tiny Epic games, starting with Tiny Epic Kingdoms, and then Tiny Epic Defenders, and now we're into Galaxies, so who knows what is going to come after this. This is more like Tiny Epic Kingdoms than Defenders. Defenders was a co-op, and Kingdoms was sort of fantasy races and trying for area control, all kinds of cool stuff like that. This one, each player has their own sort of galaxy that they're going to control. They have a player board, and then they're going to be conquering and taking control of different colonies and different planets, adding them to their repertoire, giving them new special abilities as well as victory points, and then also sort of developing their own galaxy and moving up a sort of like pseudo tech track. So let's jump into it. It plays 2 to 5 players, and the box says about 30 minutes, which I'll talk about in my review, but let's jump into how it actually works. So in Tiny Epic Galaxies, players will be sending out ships to colonize new planets, to exploit resources on various planets, and overall be the first person to score 21 victory points, which will trigger the end game, and possibly completing secreted missions to add some extra points at the end of the game. Now here you can see all of the components in the game. There's a couple of decks of cards, some dice. Now you can also see they've made efficient use of the boxes. The inside of the box top is actually a dice tray where you'll be rolling dice and taking actions. If you're familiar with War of the Ring, it's kind of that style of game where you roll dice to see available actions, but actually other players can follow the actions that you choose on your turn. And they actually use the box bottom to act as sort of an FAQ on the different colony special abilities. Now each player is going to get a player board in their color, and you can see there are 2 ships in the center of the galaxy, and these are available to distribute right away. And then each player will have 2 more ships available to them as they increase and improve their empire via this empire track. You'll also notice that you will unlock a certain amount of victory points as you increase the empire. So if we look at this here, we can actually see the yellow player has now 5 victory points for their current level of empire. The other thing that you'll notice is as you increase your empire level, you'll actually get access to more and more dice to unlock. When you start the game off, you're rolling 4 dice per turn, and then 5, and then on up to 7. The last thing you're going to be tracking is energy and culture. The energy is denoted here by these cubes, and the culture by these cylinders you can see here. Now before you start the game, you're going to shuffle up these secret mission cards. You'll deal 2 to each player, and then each player will choose 1 and put it next to their player board face down. Finally, we'll shuffle up the deck of planet cards and then deal out 2 plus the number of players. So if you're playing a 2-player game, you deal 4, just like we see here, and then you're ready to begin. So each turn is very simple. You're simply going to take the number of dice allotted to you, always 4 to start the game, roll those, throw them in the dice tray, and then take actions based on the icons. And there's 6 possible actions that you can do on your turn. So let's take a look at the first action. So the first action that you can do is to move a ship, and you can see that with this sort of rocket ship arrow looking thing. When you take an action, you're actually going to take and move the die to the activation bay, locking that particular die. Now at any time in your turn, you can re-roll anything that you haven't actually locked. Your first re-roll is free. Each re-roll after that, you're going to have to spend 1 energy to re-roll any dice that you haven't locked yet. So back again to the move ship action. What can you do with that? Now, most of the time when you take a move ship action, you can take one of your active ships from the center of your galaxy, and then you can place it on one of the colonies. There's 2 spots that you can place it. You can place it upright on the planet itself, and what it's going to do here is actually collect the resource that that planet gives. I'll explain that more in a second. Or you can lay it on its side and put it on this colonization track like so. Now there's no limit to who can have planets on the ship or on the track. However, you can only have 1 ship per track and 1 ship per planet yourself. Now you can also use the move action to move 1 ship from 1 planet to a different planet. Next, we're going to see ways to advance on the colony track. There's advanced economy, and there's also advanced diplomacy. If we take a look back to these 2 planets, you can see here indicated by this symbol that this is an advanced diplomacy track. So let's say we had taken an advanced diplomacy action as the red player. Because this ship here is currently on a track that has that particular symbol, then you could spend each one of those to move that ship 1 space on such a planet. When you finally reach the end of the planet, you'll take the planet, and then you're going to go ahead and attach this to your galaxy as one of the colonies that you own. You'll go ahead and tuck it under your galaxy board like so. And there's 2 things you're going to notice. One is the new special ability that you've unlocked, every colony that you acquire is going to give you access to a new special ability, plus the number of victory points to add to your current total. Now here we can see an example of a planet that you will colonize by advancing your economy. So there's two different types of planets, and depending on which die you roll is going to be the type of planet that you can advance on. Now this next die is how you acquire culture. If you spend a die like this, any ships that you have that are upright on the central planet that has the culture symbol up in the upper right hand corner, for each planet like so, you're going to get one culture. So I haven't talked about how you follow another player's action, and that's what culture is used for. So if I move a ship or advance by diplomacy or something like that, you can spend one culture and then copy that action and do likewise. And it goes around the table in turn order. Everybody gets a shot to follow each action that a player takes. So culture is very important for doing actions that are not on your turn, and maybe somebody else rolled a lot of cool stuff that you wanted to roll on your turn, but lo and behold, you've got enough culture to sort of make up for that. You can copy them on their turn. A really cool mechanic there. Now the next thing you can do here is acquire energy, and for each planet that you have an upright rocket on, you're going to get an energy, as well as any upright rockets that are still back at your home galaxy, you're going to get one energy for that. So in this case, we would actually get a total of 3 energy, 1 for the planet, 2 for the galaxy. So we're going to go ahead and increase our energy on the track there. And then finally, you have your utilize colony action. And this is how you use the special abilities that you acquire throughout the game, as well as this default special ability, which everybody has, which is to upgrade your empire by spending energy or culture. You'll spend the die, and then you'll be able to take any action that you have here. So for example, this particular action that we just acquired, which tells us we can discard an unoccupied planet in the middle and replace it with a new planet, we would spend this colony die to take any of these actions. Now when you take the action to upgrade your empire, you simply spend energy or culture, and you're going to spend the amount of whatever resource you choose indicated by the next space. So in this case, we'd have to spend, let's say, 2 energy, and we move up to the next space. And then the following space is going to cost us 3 of whatever we choose. So maybe the next time we do it, we'd spend 3 culture, and we move up to the next spot. And again, as you move up this spot, you're going to unlock more ships, more dice to roll, and it's going to add victory points to your overall total. So that is pretty much the game. The first player to hit 21 points will trigger the end of the game. Anybody that hasn't had a turn yet that round gets in a turn, and then you're going to reveal your secret objective. So whoever has the most points at that point is going to actually be the winner. So what do I think of the game? I think the game is awesome. I think I like this better than Tiny Epic Kingdoms. I definitely like it better than Tiny Epic Defenders, which I didn't like. But this is kind of more my style of game, I think, than Tiny Epic Kingdoms by default. So it's got some really cool mechanics that I love. It's got the dice rolling thing, which I said is kind of like a War of the Ring, where you roll your dice and there's your available actions. Now you have rerolls available to you. You can get 1 reroll, and the energy is vital because you can get extra rerolls, because sometimes the dice just hose you and you roll a bunch of colony actions and you don't really have any colony actions that you want to do. So you need to keep the energy high to be able to give yourself some more of those. Plus, you have the competing choice of using the energy to advance your empire. Same with the culture. You want to spend culture to advance your empire, but it's awesome to have that culture to sort of leash off other players' turns. The other cool thing, I'm just going to kind of spout for a minute. The other cool thing is all the cool special abilities on the cards. You can really set up some neat combos where you can get extra energy, extra culture. You can do all these kinds of cool things where you can sort of block people from copying you or make it cost extra, or you can sort of set up these sort of long game goals that you really have to play the game a couple of times to get into. You see like, well, this ability is not really that great, but if you play it a couple times, you're like, okay, if I get this early enough, it's going to give me a lot of points, and it's going to be something that I can sort of take advantage of later on in the game. So there's a lot of that in there. There's a lot of sort of replayability with all of those different planet cards. I think they each have their own special ability. I think they're completely unique planets, which is really cool. And it's going to really change up sort of the meta, you know, from game to game. So that's really my favorite part of the game, and the whole like dice following thing is really neat too, because it's like they took War of the Ring and then they slapped on Glory to Rome on top of it, and it's like, oh cool, it's like dice roll selection and you can follow and stuff. That's really neat. So player count, let's talk about that. I would say it works great at every player count, except I haven't played it with 5, and I think it would probably go a little bit longer than I'd want it with 5, but that's not really a fault of the game. just sort of aside, I kind of hate that when people are like, well, it takes a long time at the max player count. Well, of course it does. Anyway, so I think I would probably play it with 5, but it kind of would bleed into a little bit longer play. And the 30 minutes on the box is probably, I think, optimally when everybody's played it a few times, which I haven't had a thing happen yet. It's always been I'm teaching new people or whatever. So I think if everybody knows the game, maybe you could get a half-an-hour game in a 4-player. I don't know. It definitely would go over 30 minutes, though. So not outside of an hour. It was definitely going to finish in under an hour, even with 5, I think. But so the play time's a little bit of a lie in the box, but it does still play pretty quickly, and it's got, you know, a lot of rich gameplay for the amount of time that it takes. There's a little bit of AP involved, especially I think as people kind of learn the game, and you sort of learn sort of the pace of the game and what all the special abilities are that you can do. Again, that's going to come down, I think, for sure, as people become more and more familiar with the game. But I also think that's a mark of a good game. If the first time you played it kind of takes a little bit longer, and you know your people are kind of struggling with what to deal with, that's usually a good thing, because then you next time, if the game's good, in this case it is, you want to come back, reevaluate, re-strategize, you know, throw out a new deck of planet cards, get a new secret objective, and sort of tweak your strategy and everything you learned from the last game. So that's what this has got. So I think it really excels in that way. The components are great for, you know, sort of a mini game like this. The rules are very clear, and yeah, this is kind of a no-brainer. I was kind of like leery of this because I really like Tiny Epic Kingdoms. It is kind of a free-for-all game. That's definitely not everybody's style. It's kind of a Cosmic Encounter feel to that in some ways, with some area control and crazy special abilities, and just you can really kind of tweak and break that game, which we really enjoyed at our lunch group. And Tiny Epic Defenders was a huge flop for me. But anyway, that doesn't really matter. This game is great. So definitely take a look at this. If you haven't enjoyed the other Tiny Epic games, this is a different animal. This is not a co-op, obviously, and it's not as, you know, sort of chaotic and sort of breaking open the system as much as Tiny Epic Kingdom is. Now you have some of that. You can get some cool dirty combos, but they're not like to the extreme that you could get in that game, and everybody has access to them each game. So it's almost like you go in and sort of draft and try to race to get some of the different abilities. You know, you're choosing between, oh, this is a quick one I can get, it's only worth 1 point, but this special ability will work, or this other one's worth 7, but it's going to take me a long time to go down that track. So there's a lot of choices and stuff like that. This might be my favorite game from Scott Almes. I'm sort of a Scott Almes fan, I think, at this point, for sure. I like Kings of Air Steam and Tiny Epic Kingdoms, and also Harbor and stuff. I think he did another one too, I can't remember. I think this is my favorite. I think I might like this more than Harbor. A lot of people were sort of not super fans of Harbor. I read stories of people saying it took them like an hour and a half to play that, but we legitimately got that done in a lunch hour, no problem. So I'm kind of curious if people are going to come like, this takes me 2 hours to play. I'm like, I don't know how. But there's a little AP, so, you know, give yourself a play or two. If there's some AP-prone groups, which I don't seem to be having the opportunity to play with, because my groups all tend to be pretty quick for the most part, you might have a little AP with this. That would be my only kind of warning. But other than that, I think it's great. I would totally get it. Okay, thanks.